mind frame.
3, 2, you're centered. 1.
Welcome back to Grassroots Media. Welcome to this morning's edition of the Pizza Inn Saturday Morning Kickoff Show, live here from Pizza Inn in Greeneville. Once again, I'm your host, Tyler, without a co-host. Mark is still on vacation.
Hey, I resent that.
I don't have Mark on screen with me, but I have Dalton behind the camera running production and being a co-host again today. Mark, we miss you. Come back soon.
Yeah.
But Dalton, we've got you behind the screen today. We've got some action throughout the county. All 5 teams played last night. Got some wins to talk about. Unfortunately, have a loss to talk about too. You had North Green last night. I had South Green. We had others throughout the county covering those games. Had a lot of games in county. Had a few on the road. Let's start out with South Green first and foremost. That's how we've been starting out most this year. They're moved up to 6-0 on the season now after a 35-25 win over Seymour last night. It was a great night for Nash Rader. He had a 3-touchdown night, had an interception late that helped them move out to a 2-possession lead and ended up sealing the win. I like to talk about streaks and how many teams have won in a row. They've now won 9 straight regular season games, improved to 6-0 on the season, 5 straight home wins, and now 3 straight versus Seymour. You said it a few weeks ago, you feel like South Green is one of the favorites in 2A this year, and as each week passes, they look stronger and stronger and stronger.
I will back up what I said last week and the week before, and I will continue to say it over and over and over again. From the mountaintops, I think South Green is a force to be reckoned with in Class 2A in football. And, you know, we're going to find out. We'll find out a little bit more about how true that statement is going to continue to be here in the next couple of weeks as they play teams like Hampton and Eagleton even, and teams like that throughout.
They've got Happy Valley next week, too, before they take a conference break and play Granger, then finish with Eagleton and that important game against Hampton at the end of the season, which I think, as of right now, everybody's starting to look forward to because they start to see as each week passes, each team keeps winning. And that's, I think, why the TSSAA set that game in Week 11 is they expected that to be the regional championship game, and it's looking like it's shaping up to be that way, too.
Yeah, I mean, it seems like every year for the last,
That's been the last 5, I think.
Yeah, that game has been enormous. It's been huge and important, and it's going to be no different this year. But South Green's just a little bit different team. I mean, you probably saw that last night. We saw it. Well, last week we saw it a little bit. We saw a team who had enough grit and enough grind to be able to grind out a win last week against a West Green team that was opportunistic. And really, West Green, they executed their game plan to almost perfection by keeping the ball away from that potent South Green offense. But, again, that's why I think South Green is so good, because in a normal season, in a normal year, if you have a really good offense and your defense is just kind of mediocre, or a really good defense but your offense is just sort of mediocre, it's tough to win some games like they did last week. Their offense it wasn't that they were bad. It's just they didn't really have the ball a whole lot. They had it for 6 minutes in the first half, but their defense was on the field for 17, almost 18 minutes in the first half and gave up 0 score. I mean, it was 0 points. And now I think that's why they're dangerous. I think that's why they're a dangerous team right now.
Their defense had a tough task last night. Did you know anything about Seymour's offense?
I did not.
The triple option. You really don't see that a lot in high school football. And
No.
They scouted it well. They allowed them to score 25, held them to only 7 in the first half. A lot of Seymour scores were in the third quarter, and then they had one very late with about a minute left in the ball game. But South Green, once again, credit to them. You see a triple option coming in. They've had some tough offenses to go against this year with the triple option. And then Cumberland Gap's offense, who everybody knows about, is one of those where you really have to key in on every single opponent that you're looking at on offense, because you never know where the ball is going. It was the same with Seymour last night, because it could have went to the draw play, it could have went to the quarterback, and he could have pitched it out to the third man. And they ended up getting one of those back. That's another turnover I forgot to mention. Nash Rader actually hopped on a fumble because they had a failed pitch on the third option. Or I guess that's the second option technically, to the third guy. But tough offense to scheme against. But Joe Case and his defense did really well. Allowed them to score only 25. They scored 1 touchdown the first half. Scored 2 quickly in the third quarter and brought it to a 21-19 game. That's something that I really hadn't thought about this year. South Green has not trailed all year. And that might have been the closest that they've came to trailing.
And that's with 2 4A opponents on their schedule as well.
Correct. I won 5A. Crockett.
That's true. I was counting them as a 4A,
Yes.
so a 4A and a 5A.
I think that might have been the 2 times they've been the closest to trailing, because West Green, they never got close to trailing. I know Cumberland Gap, they never got close. And Chucky Doak was a dogfight too. I will say Chucky Doak was probably one of the closer games they've had all year, but Seymour put them on their toes, and credit to South Green. They didn't back down. That's one thing you've seen at South Green. Whenever they've had those disappointing drives, whenever the other team shifts the momentum in their direction, South Green always does something on offense that is able to move that momentum back in their direction.
Yeah, I think for me, this South Green team this year, again, I just said it a minute ago, they play really good complementary football. And the other thing about this team is that they were good last year. They were a good football team last year. But they lacked that ability to really push it to the next level and get over those humps. And I'm thinking back to the West Green game last year when they should have won that game, and they ended up, snatching defeat out of the jaws of victory towards the very end of the game. But this year's team seems a little bit different in the fact that they do play complementary football. If the offense goes out and makes a mistake, the defense bows up. If the defense goes out and gives up a touchdown, a score of some sort, the offense comes back out. Think about West Green last week. Second half, West Green comes out and scores quickly on a long 40 or 50-yard pass play to Austin Franklin, and it makes it a one-score game. It's now 15. Well, I guess it was still two-score because it was 15-6. But they come out and 2-3 plays later, they're in the end zone again. And that's exactly what you want if you're a football coach, if you're a football team, if you're a fan of the South Green Rebels. That's what it takes to win. Is you have to be able to play complementary football. You have to be able to allow your defense to help your offense and allow your offense to be your defense's best friend. And that's what South Green has done so far this year. And you look at it. They've beaten you look at a team like Chuggy Doak, and we're going to talk about their game against Claiborne last night here in a little bit, but you look at a team like Chuggy Doak, who is in 3A, so they're a division higher than South. Well, they're a division higher than West Green too, but they're a division higher than the Rebels. But the only loss they have on the year, Chuggy Doak, is South Green. And that was a two-score game against.
Should have been one.
Yeah, I mean it was a two-score game against Chuggy Doak, and they've beaten teams in 3A, they've beaten teams in 4A, they've beaten a team in 5A. They're a team that they're very well put together. They respond very well. They respond very well to adversity. At least they have so far. And I think in the years past there's been some really good South Green Hampton games. Now, obviously, there's a while to go to get there. No coach down there on Rebel Hill is going to talk to you about Hampton until it's the week of the Hampton game. But they are put together this year to do something, and I think that game's going to be better than it's been in a long time, just because of how well they're put together. But, that's just my opinion. I wasn't there at the game last night, but I was trying to keep track of the score. I was busy last night.
You were
running camera, doing production, doing the call.
I was about to say, did you broadcast also?
I was broadcasting with Joseph McAfee. Joseph McAfee was in the booth with me last night, and I say the booth. We were on top of the bleachers there at North Green.
It's all right.
So I was busy, but I was trying to keep up with scores and stuff as well. And I saw that South Green jumped out to that big lead, and I actually said on the broadcast, I said, "Whoa, the South Green's up big." I didn't expect that. I expected it to be a pretty tight game. I guess it came down to being a decently tight game, but it's one of those things that sometimes the scoreboard doesn't really tell you how one-sided the football game was.
I was going to draw back to that where it got to 21-19, and you said how sometimes the defense helps the offense. It's kind of funny how Nash Rader helped Nash Rader, because Nash Rader had an interception when it was 21-19 and then ran in the next touchdown to make it 28-19. So he completely shifted the entire momentum of the game right there with that interception and that touchdown, because then it goes to, okay, Seymour could drive right here and actually take the lead and make South Green trail for the first time all year in the fourth quarter. Or South Green can make a big play right here and be able to help themselves with another touchdown. That's exactly what they did.
It's kind of like that the meme with Spider-Man looking at each other.
The three Spider-Man.
The three Spider-Man. Yeah, they're like looking at each other, pointing the fingers. That's what that reminds me of, is Nash Rader meet Nash Rader. The defense, the offense. He's a is it Travis Hunter that's the two-way player for Colorado? He's a specialist there.
I want to go back to the Crockett game and say that's Nash's most impressive game just because he had over 200 yards. I think he had 3 touchdowns in that game too. But last night was a great game also because he had 3 total touchdowns and he had 2 takeaways on defense, which is probably the game that he's filled up the stat book the most. Outside of that, Keyshawn Ingram had a rushing touchdown, and Jacob Suson kept it himself for a rushing touchdown. All 5 of South Green's touchdowns came on the ground. And then Trey Gudger, that's another player who had a big game. We talked about him last week, making that huge stop on 4th down against West Green to seal that game. And he did it this week again with an interception with less than 30 seconds remaining when Seymour cut it down to 10 and actually got an onside kick. So it's not likely Seymour comes back and wins in that situation, down 10 with 30 and the ball at about midfield. But nonetheless, he had that interception late in the game and for the second week in a row sealed the win.
Again, that defense sometimes in high school football, defense is your absolute best offense. And it seems like every week we could just say the same thing, just on repeat.
And it's different players.
It is.
It's not just one player.
It is.
You've got Gudger or Gentry. You've got Buckner. You've got Rader, who this week had 2 takeaways. You've got Deion Blair back there. You've got Pendleton. You've got a lot of good players on that defense.
Yeah. Yeah, they're good athletes. They're well coached. They're smart. That's a good recipe for successful football and high school football.
Correct. They're moving up to 6-0 now, 2-0 in conference play with another conference game coming up this week. They've got Happy Valley. They host Happy Valley again. And that's one thing that I've joked about with South Green. Have you noticed that so far this year they have not left the county? They will not have hopped on a bus and left Greene County until week 8. No, week 9, because they had their bye week 2.
I did not realize that.
Hosted Crockett, hosted Cumberland Gap, traveled to West Green, traveled to Chucky Dope, hosted Seymour, and then I'm blanking on their other game, but I know they hosted them.
That's it. Well, Union County.
That's who it was. They hosted Union County.
Yeah.
So all 6 games have either been at home or against a county opponent on the road.
Well, we questioned the scheduling a bye week in week 2, but I think I would take a bye week in week 2 if I didn't have to travel out of Greene County until daggone October.
Yeah,
that's a pretty good deal.
Mm-hmm.
Talk about being well rested and getting home at an early hour.
They're going to be the Road Warriors at the end of the year, just like they were last year. They finished with 3 straight road games to end the year against Eagleton, Granger, and Hampton, not in that particular order, but putting a cap on them. South Green, 35-25 win over Seymour. Great night for the Rebels once again. Let's move into Chucky Dope. They picked up an important conference win last night. 27-6 over Claiborne. Started a little slow, but I think that's just because their offense couldn't get out on the field.
Yeah,
Claiborne's offense stayed on there for the first 7 minutes and 25 seconds of the game. Scored their only touchdown of the night to make it 6-0. After that, it was all Chucky Dope, 27-6 final. We talked about Nash Rader at the beginning and how great of a night he had. Let's talk about Brock Rush. What didn't he do last night?
I mean, according to Tate Russell, drive the bus home. I mean, the guy, he was leading the team pretty much the entire night on offense and defense, and he's a guy that we've talked about before. I've said it in high school game day. I've said it in pregame shows before Chucky Dope football games. I mean, Brock Rush is a guy that if you get the ball in his hands, he is electric. And I think that Billy Kaler even said that exact same thing last night. He's a guy that you don't have to try to do too much. Give him the ball and let him work. Mm-hmm. And, defensively, he's just an athlete. So you play a team and let him get out there and, just fly to the football and know what he's doing and do it loosely, but because he knows his job, he knows his assignment, he can do it fast and a little bit out of control. And he's going to have games like that. And, you like having players like Brock Rush. I mean, Billy Kaler even said, we're glad to have him. And I'm sure they are. I'm sure they feel extremely lucky that they have Brock Rush on their team. And, I mean, he's a weekly highlight reel. Every time he touches the football, he's going to do something. Either it's going to be a long score or he's going to, juke somebody out of their shoes every week.
And you look back to that play against Gallenberg Pittman last year that we ranked as our best play on any of our broadcast last year, he does that every week almost.
Every week.
He does one crazy thing every week that just makes your jaw hit the floor. And what's crazy about that play against Pittman is that he did that almost in the backfield. I can't remember if it started in the backfield.
It was a little swing pass.
Yeah,
it was. Well, I guess it was out in the flat, but still, I mean,
he goes like 75, 80 yards from the flat, making at least like 4 or 5 defenders miss. And it seemed like he made a lot miss last night. A rushing touchdown, a receiving touchdown, 2 interceptions, 37-yard kickoff return, 40-yard punt return, and he probably had close to 10 tackles on defense.
I mean,
if my memory serves me correct, too, I think he had one of these crazy games against Claiborne last year, but I can't remember for sure.
If you have a high school fantasy team of East Tennessee, you definitely wanted to have Brock. Well, you wanted him last night for sure.
Absolutely.
Because he's scoring. It doesn't matter if it's ESPN, Yahoo, doesn't matter what scoring rating that is. That's going to be a really high score total for you last night. He was not only a good football player last night in real life, he had some wild fantasy stats as well with the touchdowns and the yardage and the special teams things and the tackles and the interceptions and, I mean, literally a little bit of everything. But, I think that the thing about that Chucky Doak team, and I'll say it, I'll continue to say it, it really impresses me. And, fans that are watching, fans that hear this, you may disagree. It really impresses me with those young men there in Lower Afton at Chucky Doak because there aren't a lot of adults that could handle a leadership change every single year for 4 years and still be able to come out and play at the level that they do. They are able to go out there week in and week out and execute an offense and defensive game plan that is, almost to perfection every time they do it. And it's not just Brock. I mean, Brock is successful because the scheme allows Brock to be successful. But you put the ball in his hands and let him go to work. But he's not the only one. That whole team, that offensive line is tough. I mean, they're big, they're strong, they're fast. They're a tough team, a tough football team to play. And it doesn't matter what environment you put them in, they just seem to come out there week in and week out and just really do a bang-up job. And, my hat's off to them. They have my respect. I hear it all the time. I hear it all the time about, their sideline etiquette and, how crass that – and that's just high school football players in general. If you've ever been on the sideline of a high school football game or if you've ever been to a high school football practice – they're not choir boys over there, and you're going to hear some words that are offensive probably, but you can say whatever you want about their infighting and their banter and their whatever you want to say, but those are good kids. They're good ball players, and they're due all the credit and all the respect for how they've handled themselves over the last 4 years. They're 6-1 right now with a brand new coach. It's kind of like North Green having 7 ladies basketball players last year. That's how I feel about it. They shouldn't be 6-1. They have every reason and excuse to be 500 or below right now in the teams that they've played, in the games that they've played, but they're not. They're 6-1. And hats off to Billy Kaler and his staff, but extra kudos to those boys.
The defense was impressive last night. That's what I want to talk about. Chucky Doak's defense has impressed us all year, to where their offense is usually what you've been talking about the most, but their defense held them to 6 points after that first long touchdown drive.
94 yards, I think.
94 yards, 7 minutes and 25 seconds. And then after that, they forced 5 turnovers the rest of the game. I know Brock had 2 of those. One of those actually went for a touchdown. Hayden Roper had a strip fumble that he ran back for a touchdown. One thing that Billy Kaler said at the beginning of the year that I will never forget, too, is if you get a touchdown on special teams or defense, your chances of winning a game go up exponentially. And you've seen that a lot from them this year.
Yeah.
You saw, I know their only loss of the year against South Green, you saw Brock Rush run back a kick return close to 80 yards. You saw a strip fumble last night go for a touchdown. They win that game. I can't think of another one, but I think there was another game that they won this year where they had an interception returned for a touchdown. So you're starting to see their defense actually turn into kind of a second offense for them and start carrying them on their back and scoring points on defense, and that's pretty impressive.
Yeah, I mean, there's a reason why you hear coaches say that, a lot of times games are won with special teams and the turnover battle, because that stuff. I mean, when you force a team to turn the ball over, whether it's a turnover on downs or whether you take it away from them, interception, fumble, recovery, whatever. When you force them to do that, you legitimately stop them wherever they are, on the field. You stop them, and they can't score points anymore. So anytime you get a turnover, that's an extra series for your offense to go out there. And as long as your offense has the football and they're not turning it over, the other team can't score. I mean, that's just how the game's played. So if you're playing good defense and you're taking the ball away, and then on special teams, if you're returning punts, if you're returning kicks, if your punt team, kicks a ball and downs it inside the 10-yard line, I mean, it's tough to go 90 yards. I mean, Claiborne did it on the first drive last night, but how long did it take them? Almost the entire first quarter.
They didn't do it anymore after that.
Right. So
going through the other three names that we usually talk about on offense, Isaiah Treadway, he had the other touchdown. He had a 19-yard receiving touchdown. Brazen Mervin didn't get into the end zone, but he had 15 rushes for 118 yards. Nick Palazzo had 93 yards passing with 2 touchdowns overall. Great night for Chucky Doak's offense, too. That's something that you probably don't expect with it just being a 27-point game. But, I mean, everybody did their job. Nick, almost 100 yards. Brazen had over 100 yards once again. Treadway got in for a touchdown, and then Brock Rush, we talked about him. I mean, he was literally everywhere.
Yeah. I think, again, that's what's most impressive about this team. You not only do you insert a new head coach, but you take out an all-state caliber quarterback, and you enter in a quarterback who has not played starting quarterback in his entire career, inserts as a starting quarterback, and he's, is he going to sling it all over the field? Can he? I think he probably could if that's what they had to do, but he doesn't have to, and that's not what he tries to do. And, a couple years ago, I talked about Luke Myers and what I loved about Luke Myers. The thing I loved about Luke Myers and why I think he was a great quarterback was because he always seemed to make the right decision. You could see him read through the progressions on the route tree. He would look at his first option, his second option, his third option. If it was not there, he would check it down or he would run it. I mean, that is exactly what you teach a quarterback to do. And that's exactly what he did. I've not watched Nick as much as I watched Luke that first year. But what I will say about Nick is that he doesn't force a lot of things. If it's not there, he doesn't force it most of the time. And what we just talked about, if you're not turning the ball over, the other team can't score. So when you've got athletes like Isaiah Treadway, Brazen Mervin, Brock Rush, when you've got athletes like that and an offensive line that you do, if you just take care of the football and stay ahead of the chains, getting 2, 3, 4 yards at a time, you're going to win football games. And so I think that's important. You go to probably the most important position on the field in the quarterback, and you get a brand new quarterback after losing an all-state caliber. You get a brand new head coach. But like you just said, everybody's doing their job. Brazen Mervin's still running for over 100 yards. Brock Rush is still, out there playing the flash. And you've got Isaiah Treadway, who's just, watching. When you watch him, it's like he's coming off a starting block at a track meet. Just trying to beat you deep. And if he beats you deep, or if he's one-on-one and they throw it up, it's more like a 60-40 ball. It's not really 50-50.
And that's one thing that I think a lot of people thought that Chucky Doak would be missing this year is that deep ball threat, not having Caden Tullock and Austin Morris out there anymore. But you started to see Isaiah Treadway become that deep ball threat too. And you saw it twice in the South Green game where he went up and mossed 2 defenders for touchdowns.
Yeah. I mean, that's what he does.
Yeah, that's one thing you thought they'd be lacking, and then boom, here it is again.
Yeah, they're a fun team to watch.
They are.
I mean, South Green does it. South Green is a great football team because they're a great football team. Chucky Doak is like that swag type team. Like when they're playing,
had it last year too.
They did, and when they're playing well, like they're fun to watch because they're explosive and they get excited. South Green, I mean, sure, they're explosive. They do things that are explosive. They score a lot of points and they play great defense. But when you watch South Green, it's like a surgeon, just carving through and doing their job. When you watch Chucky Doak, it's like, I would liken it to the Greene County version of Coach Prime and the Colorado Buffaloes. Like they're doing it and they're loud about it and they're fun about it. And so, I don't know, maybe that's because I'm used to watching Brock Rush. Like Brock Rush is one of those guys where normally you want to tell your ball carriers, make one cut and get upfield. He's not one of those guys. You tell him like, look, if you can make a highlight reel play here and juke 4 times, go ahead and do it. That's fine with me.
And he's bound to do it on any given play, too. Good news for Chucky Doe. They don't have to travel to Johnson County this year. They host Johnson County coming up. That's another good thing. For us, the Grassroots Media team, nobody's got to go to Johnson County this year.
Nobody has to go to Johnson County.
Nobody has to go to Johnson County this year. I'm so excited for
After
that.
they hosted, was it the regional baseball tournament up there?
Oh, gosh. West Green football went up there. Chucky Doak football went up there. They hosted the regional baseball tournament, which in itself was...
Well, the night you had to go up there, they
Yes.
started out at Johnson County and ended up at Sullivan
Sullivan
East.
Yeah. Started out as a 2 o'clock first pitch. Did not get out of there till about 8 o'clock because the Union County Pigeon Forge game lasted, or no, it started late too. That was a whole fiasco. It would take too long to go through that whole entire day, and I really don't want to
relive
back on that again. No, I don't. But Chucky Doak, they're hosting Johnson County this week. That's another important region game for them.
Huge.
I think here on out, Chucky Doak has nothing but region games left on their schedule.
Big games.
They've got a chance to set themselves up with a nice Week 11 matchup with Gallenberg Pittman also.
Yeah.
Because they've beaten Claiborne. They've beaten Pigeon Forge. If they can beat Johnson County, then they've got Unicoi County. Unicoi County, I think, should be at home this year also. And then you've got Gatlinburg Pittman at home once again for the third straight year. Could they get it done this year? This year it'll be for the regional championship. As last year it was to continue your season into the playoffs. So,
they won the regional championship last year with their final week of the season win over West Green. But I think a regional championship this year would I don't say it would mean more. I don't think it would mean more. I think last year's region championship was huge. It was the first one in school history. But I think that it would, from the eye test, it would be more impressive. Because if you were able to win that region, that means that you have run the gauntlet. Because if they do, and they win out, that means that they have run the gauntlet against teams like Johnson County, Claiborne County, Pigeon Forge, Gatlinburg Pittman, and Unicoi County. I mean, Unicoi County and Johnson County are teams that they beat last year, but Gatlinburg Pittman is a team that the past 2 years they've played really tight in the playoffs, but they've not been able to get over that hump. If they take care of business and win out the rest of the year and finish the season 9-1 and win that Region 1 3A title, man, you talk about a huge spirit boost going into the 3A playoffs.
that's one thing I was going to ask. What would be sweeter, beating West Green to win a regional championship or beating Gatlinburg Pittman after the loss the last 2 years? I mean, I guess you leave that up to them to decide, but they've got a chance to do both.
Yeah,
I think a chance to correct their wrong from the last 2 years.
I think beating a team like West Green last year for that regional championship would be like beating Florida after Tennessee beating Florida after like a 15-year drought. Not that they had a drought, but that's the kind of rivalry that they have. Beating Gatlinburg Pittman would almost be like beating Alabama because it's a team that I don't know that Chucky Doak has ever beaten. It's a team that perennially is good. I mean, great year in and year out, not only against Greene County teams, but just in general.
Mm-hmm.
And so I think that would be again, I don't think it would mean more, but in my eyes at least, it would be more impressive. It would be a more impressive win.
We'll close the cap on this recap. Chucky Doak, as we mentioned, 27-6 win over Claiborne. They host Johnson County coming up for another Region 1 3A matchup. We've got to go take a break, though. We'll be right back in just a minute. We'll run some sponsors on the screen. Thank you to all of our sponsors, and thank you to Kyle for letting us sit in again. We've got the breakfast pizza in front of us. No veggie special this week. Mark's not here. Dalton just gets the plain. I guess this is 3-meat treat breakfast pizza.
That's the
ham,
all-meat
sausage,
pizza,
bacon.
baby.
Hey, I mean, it's good. I like some veggies on mine, though. But we'll be back in just a minute right here on Grassroots Media.
Pizza Inn offers contactless buffet to go with JoJo's Family Feast or anything on our menu for carryout. We also honor birthday parties and cater to businesses and large events. We make it easy. Call us today. Pizza Inn Greeneville.
At Corner Pond, the friendly and knowledgeable staff has the experience necessary to help you out regardless the need. Have an item of value you'd like to pawn or sell? Corner Pond can help. They pawn numerous items of value, including firearms, tools, ammunition, silver, coins, and much more. When you walk through their doors, you'll find well-stocked shelves full of electronics, gaming systems, fishing and hunting equipment, car audio and accessories, And don't forget about the room full of guitars and basses and amplifiers, or their outside lawn and garden equipment. Corner Pawn is a case knife dealer and carries numerous used knives as well. Stop by and let the friendly staff at Corner Pawn help you today at 432 East Bernard Avenue, Greeneville, Tennessee. Tommy's Plumbing has provided professional plumbing services to the residents of Greeneville, Tennessee for over 30 years. Our experience and reputation have helped us grow our business to add locations in Jonesboro, Tennessee. Tommy's Plumbing is local and family owned, and we offer a full line of plumbing services, such as kitchen faucet, shower faucets, commodes, and bathroom faucets, as well as drain cleaning. We also provide outside plumbing work, such as septic and sewer drain cleanouts, as well as repair and replace. Tommy's Plumbing pretty much does it all. Tommy's Plumbing is licensed, bonded, and insured. Our quality workmanship and passion to provide our clients with expert service is second to none. We guarantee we have the best warranty around. For all your plumbing needs, give Tommy's a call at 638-3662.
Community minded, just like you. Community minded, that's for sure it's true.
You care about the future of this community. You grew up here. You've raised a family here. Your life is here. So is ours. Greeneville Federal Bank, member FDIC. Banking made easy.
Community minded, just like you.
Pizza, pancakes, or donuts. The Davy Crockett Travel Center in Baileyton has the cure for all your cravings. While you're there, shop our general store for souvenirs, gifts, and cellular accessories. In a hurry, grab a cold drink and a hot dog to go. Check us out on Facebook and come to Baileyton.
Welcome back to Grassroots Media. Welcome back to this morning's edition of the Pizza Inn Saturday Morning Kickoff Show, live here from Pizza Inn in Greeneville. If you're joining us late, we covered South Green and Chucky Doke in the latter part in the first half, so we'll go ahead and jump right into West Green this time, who picked up a big 49-22 win over Cumberland Gap last night on homecoming night. They needed a win. We talked about it being a must-win, do-or-die situation last week. Coach Monroe even said it this week. The urgency was there. They came out, almost hung 50 on the Panthers. Scored 49 on homecoming night, came out with a 49-22 win with 371 rushing yards. What a win for West Green when they needed one most, and what a performance by their running game.
Yeah, I mean, you come out against a team who, Cumberland Gap it's no secret. They're in a down year this year. They don't have as many players. They don't have as much depth.
Excuse me.
Bless you. We've watched them a couple of times this year. We've seen them against Greene County schools. They've played North Greene. They've played South Greene. We've seen them in those games, but almost hanging a 50 burger and doing it really the majority of it on the ground.
What they like to do most, what Cumberland Gap likes to do.
I think, to me, that's probably one of the most impressive things is that West Green played as well on defense as they did, not giving up any more than what they did. And it's just simply because that offense is hard to stop. It's like Army's offense. Like Army's offense is going to score touchdowns even against teams like Alabama and Georgia and things like that because it's just hard to stop. It's kind of like that triple option type deal where, there's a lot of misdirection, there's a lot of moving parts. It's quick, it hits quick. That's just how it is. So, hats off to their defense, but really hats off to their running game.
371 yards. That might be the most West Green's had in a long time. You'd have to go through their record books and talk to Mark Greenlee the last time they've had 371 rushing yards in a game.
Well, they say that Adrian Sauceman is the West Green historian. So we'll have to. I don't know.
Touch base with him and ask.
Yeah, we'll have to see if
Mark
he knows.
Greenlee keeps the books. I think.
Does he?
That's what I've been told, that he keeps stats.
Well, he might. I don't know.
He might for his defense. That's what I knew, that he kept tackles and such. So he might do it for his defense. I don't know about offense.
Okay.
Well, I have to talk to Adrian Sauceman because somehow, some way, he could dig that information.
Sauceman would find out.
Yeah.
Sauceman would find out, even if he has to call our good buddy Wayne Phillips and get some records from Wayne. Which, shout out to Wayne. Love that guy.
Love that guy, too. It's hard not to.
It's hard not to. I mean, he's been doing this for a long time. Mm-hmm. He is literally a living record book.
And I think he's the one that you have to look up to the most throughout this area for
he is.
Sports coverage. I don't know how long he's been doing it, but, man.
Longer than I've been alive.
He's probably covered grandparents' grandchildren.
Yeah.
Like he's probably covered athletics that long in Greene County.
He has. I mean, and what's great is that of all the people that he's covered, of all the people that he's met and everybody that he's written stories on and stuff, he still, every time I see him, he calls me by name, asks me how my family's doing, asks me how my dad's doing. He remembers my career at West Greene. Like, it's really impressive. And, he is one reason why I love what we get to do, because of everything he's meant to me and how much he's meant to me and the coverage that he provided with the Greeneville Sun for a number of years with sports coverage here. It meant a lot to me, and that's what we want to accomplish here with Grassroots Media, is providing that same type of feeling through just a different medium and a different style. And so, I don't know. I guess we got off on that sidetrack just because he's like
It's awesome to show love to Wayne.
It is. Adrian might be the West Greene historian, but when it comes to sports historians for at least the last 40 years in Greeneville, Greene County, you start and probably end with Wayne Phillips.
It's the thing I love about basketball season. That's when you see Wayne the most. I don't know if Wayne will ever see this, but shout out to Wayne for all he's ever done.
Yeah, who knows if he'll see it or not.
But if anybody sees this and knows Wayne personally, show this to Wayne. Let him know that we appreciate all he's ever done. But going back to the stats last night from West Greene, wasn't just one person that ran for 371 yards. That's something that West Greene's had all year. They've had a slew of running backs and players that can run the ball for success last night. Ian Keefe for 7 attempts, 168 yards, 3 touchdowns. Doc Moody, 6 attempts, 89 yards and a touchdown. Max Garber, he had 1 attempt for 4 yards. Dawson Daniels, 2 attempts for 75 yards and a touchdown. And then Austin Franklin had 1 run for 40 yards and a touchdown. Passing, too, they didn't throw it much, but when they did, Dawson Daniels, 3 of 4, 62 yards with a touchdown. And that touchdown ended up in the hands of, I'd have to check.
Alex Johnson.
That is correct.
30-yard touchdown reception.
He's got a nickname on here on his stat sheet, so I'm not sure the nicknames. But great night overall by West Greene's offense. And like you said, great night by their defense, too, only holding that team to 22. But when your offense scores that many points, I think the defense kind of breathes a little easier.
Yeah, it's one of those things that, you mentioned him earlier, Mark Greenlee, with that defense that he has. He takes a lot of pride in that.
Mm-hmm.
And, I mean, you only give up, 29 points last week to South Greene. You probably aren't very happy with giving up 22 points if you're Coach Greenlee and that defensive staff. But, again, a really good offense covers a number of woes on defense. And again, I don't say it's a gimmick offense, but it's a tough offense.
It is.
It's not something that you're going to be able to easily prepare for. So, 22 points, that's a lot. If you've scored less than 22 points, you're really upset with your defense. But when you almost hang a 50 burger on the team, 22 points sounds like a real good number.
That's something that I think you look at West Greene also, that their record doesn't suggest that they're a great team. They're 3-4 now? But you look back at that South Greene game last week, when they're determined and when they're motivated, they could be a scary team. Because they executed that game plan really well.
Look,
You hold South Greene, I think, the least amount of points that they've scored all year.
I have never been one, Tyler, to mince words or, especially when it comes to Western Greene County. It's no secret that I am a Western Greene County blood native. I was born and raised on the west end of Greene County, graduated from West Greene High School, coached West Greene High School baseball for a few years with Adrian Sauceman, was the head coach at West Greene Middle School for a number of years. And I will say this, I love my community. I still lead worship at Encompass Church, which is on the west end of the county. So I have no qualms with saying what I'm about to say. That community, when it is motivated, is tough to beat. And I'm not just talking about football or sports related, the whole community. It's tough to beat when they're motivated. Mm-hmm. Unfortunately for us, sometimes they don't get motivated very easily. And, it takes a little bit of animosity, like a milk can game, to bring that out. If you've ever been a coach of a Western Greene County team, you know the frustration of trying to motivate those kids because you see their potential, you know what they can do, you know what they're capable of, and lighting that fire underneath them is sometimes a difficult task. But when you can accomplish it, great things happen. And I think they lost last week. But O.J. Early said it in the article. Many observers around Greene County had they had no belief that game would even be close, and it was. Mm-hmm. It was a 2-score game, but it really felt like a 1-score game for the majority of that game.
At one point, I believe was it a 1-score game at one point?
It was multiple
14?
times. Yeah. So, just a really tough Really tough team whenever they're playing motivated. Obviously, you score 49 points last night, and when you do it on the ground, it makes it feel like more total domination. Because you can score 49 points if you're throwing it for 300 yards.
That's impressive in itself. You score 49 points on 371 rushing yards with the time continuously clicking.
Yeah.
Like, you think 371 rushing yards, like, okay, they're not going to score that much because you run the ball, you get the play, you set up, you snap it. That's 30 seconds plus however long it takes for the play to run.
Yep.
You don't expect to get 371 yards that way. So, I mean, they must have been huge chunk plays, too, because you look at these and you look at the averages, 7 attempts for 168, 6 for 84, 2 for 75, 1 for 40. I mean, those are long runs. So they did a great job busting through Cumberland Gap's line, picking up big yardage, and getting into the end zone last night with a 49-22 win. Unfortunately for them, things don't get any easier.
No.
They travel to Hampton this week. They get done with South Green last week. They get a win in a do-or-die game. Now they go up to Hampton. But on the bright side of things, they still have a shot to finish second within the region and host a playoff game. They have to run the table, though, and this is arguably their toughest challenge left on their schedule now.
You know, it is. I think it is. But, again, if you approach this game like you did last week's game against South Green, anything can happen. I mean, you know, that is a winnable game. And I know that some people are listening to this and they're going to say, you know, that's a joke. But it's a winnable game. It is a winnable game. I think that, you know, if they play defense well, they're able to stop the run of Hampton and cut down on the big chunk plays and are able to establish the run game. That's what they want to do. They don't want Dawson Daniels to have to air it out all the time. They want to be able to get their yardage on the ground. Now, are you going to go to Hampton and put up 371 yards of rushing offense?
Probably not against Hampton.
It's probably not going to happen. If it does, you hope you win. But, you know, it's probably not in the cards against a team like Hampton. But you don't have to.
No, you carry out the same game plan against South Green. Hold the ball, get the same amount of yardage, and if some of those plays on fourth down go the opposite way, you don't know how different the ball game could be.
Absolutely. I think, you know, for West Green, for the Buffaloes, you travel up to Hampton. If you travel to Hampton and you knock off the Bulldogs at home and you have left on your schedule, who do they have left? Happy Valley?
Happy Valley, and
I think that's it for region play, right? Because they've already played South Green. They've already played Eagleton. They would have played Hampton. They'd have Happy Valley. So that'd be it. So if you knock off Hampton this week, I mean, I have no issue saying that would be an upset. If you knock off Hampton at home this week and then go take care of business against Happy Valley the following week, yeah. I mean, you finish second in the region. You host a home playoff game. And, you know, again, last year, I don't know that the Hampton team that they're going to face this Friday night is any better than the Unicoi County team they played last year at home when they beat them. So it's a winnable game. You definitely are the underdog going into this game, but it's a winnable game. You've got to take care of business on defense. Like you just said, you have to play good offense. You have to keep it out of their hands and not let them have it, but you have to play good defense.
I think everybody on the western side of Greene County is looking forward to that game too because of all the implications it does have. And you could probably expect a lot of them to travel to Hampton too, which is with as big as a game as it is. Let's jump into North Greene now. They played Cloudland last night. Another homecoming out. A lot of homecomings in the county. I think we had three total last night.
Greenville had homecoming as well.
Yes, you usually don't see a lot of homecomings in one night, but North Greene had their homecoming last night too. Unfortunately, it didn't go the way that they wanted it to with a 46-8 loss to Cloudland. We broadcasted that game last night. You were there. You were on the call. You wrote the article. Tell me what you saw from that game last night.
You know, I said it to Coach Tilson and his staff before the game. I was in the locker room talking to him, and I said, look, I think this is a very winnable game for you guys. I think that Cloudland likes to run the ball a lot, and it's going to be tough for them to – if they were a passing team like Williamsburg, if they were a team that was built like Williamsburg, sure, they could hang a lot of points because, you know, that's what they do. But they're a team that likes to run the ball. I don't think they're going to be able to get 40, 50-yard chunk plays, 30-yard chunk plays against you with the rushing attack that they have. I think this is a really winnable game. The scoreboard, 48-6 was the final. The game got away from them in the second half, really the end of the third quarter and the fourth quarter. But the first quarter, It was back and forth. First series, fourth and 1, and Cloudland fumbles a snap, turnover on downs. North Green gets it. First play from the line of scrimmage, Thomas Darnell, 20-yard rushing play, 20-plus yard rushing play. Very next play, or a couple plays later, interception. Cloudland takes the ball down the field. I don't remember if they scored on the second or third drive. I would have to go back and look. But they score, and you're sitting there thinking, me and Joseph McAfee were in the booth talking, and we're like, hey, look, you feel like you've got a score right here. And what do you think you do? And Joseph said, well, I would hand the ball to my career rushing leader. And the very first play from scrimmage, hand it to Yeshua Vaught, 55-yard touchdown run. Boom. 2-point conversion, good, 8-8. The first quarter ends in an 8-8 tie. The second quarter, North Green, again, playing really good defense. They're giving up, every now and again, they're giving up a 10, 11-yard run. But for the most part, they're bending, but they're not breaking. They end up getting another turnover on downs. They're driving in to score, and they turn it over themselves. And at this point, they turn it over in short field for Cloudland. Cloudland scores and goes ahead 16-8. That score remains with North Green getting the ball back with like 3 minutes to go. And you think, they would like, well, actually, I believe they had 8 minutes to go. You think, well, let's take this down the field, drive all the way down the field, take time out of the clock, and score before halftime, tie this thing up, and we get the ball first come out of half. That's what we were saying on the call. That's what I was imagining that Coach Tilson was wanting to do. Unfortunately, they couldn't get their offense untracked on that series. Cloudland was able to get the ball back, and they scored with 37 seconds left in the half. So at halftime, that score looked pretty rough. It was 24-8, but really, they scored with 37 seconds to go. North Green's defense played really, really well against a good rushing attack from Cloudland for the whole first half. They scored on a couple plays whenever they had short field. The second half got away from them. But North Green was trying to do a lot of new stuff. They were throwing the ball around a lot, and they had some guys wide open, but their offensive line was allowing defenders to come through, and Thomas Darnell did not really have a whole lot of time to do a whole lot. And when he did have time, his internal clock was telling him, like, you got to get rid of it. And so he was underthrowing balls and not really hitting receivers when he should have or could have. And again, some of that was just underthrown balls. Some of it was he was just pressured and had to get rid of it. It was a lot of that. It was a lot of that, and I think that they were trying to do a little bit different than what maybe Cloudland had seen on film, because everybody's going to be keying on number 3, Yeshua Vaught. Mm-hmm. Everybody. No secret.
Every single week.
Every single week, that's what's going to happen. But, when they did that and they keyed on him, they were able to stop him in the backfield or for 3-4 yard gain, and then North Green would go back to the air. I think Cloudland had the advantage. And so North Green in the second half just couldn't get the offense. They had some big plays. They were aided by some penalties from Cloudland, and they were able to get across the 50 a couple of different times, but they couldn't put a drive together to score in the second half to bring it back within a score or two. And then Cloudland just continued. Kyle Birchfield, I don't know if you've got to watch that guy play. But
not that Birchfield.
Well, there's a lot of Birchfields.
There is a lot of Birchfields.
But that guy, he's a good ball player. I mean, anytime they would run that off tackle play or the little toss sweep, I mean, he was lightning quick to the outside. He ran with a purpose, and even whenever he was running between the tackles, as soon as he got the ball, he was as hard as he could go downhill, and he would always fall forward 3-4 yards. So really good game last night. I say that it was 46-8. Doesn't seem like it was a good game, but a lot of times that scoreboard doesn't really tell the story. The second half was not good to North Green, but hats off to North Green. That first half, that's the best I've seen a North Green team play in a long time, probably a decade. It's probably the best I've seen a North Green team played. They were well coached. They were well prepared. They executed well defensively. Like I said, they had multiple 4-and-outs because Cloudland never punted. They never kicked it. They never did anything special teams-wise. North Green played well in that first half, but offensively they just couldn't get enough offense to hang with Cloudland.
The good news is for North Green, though, they've got a bye week, so they've got time to prepare for their next conference game, which is Unaka. That'll be 13 days from now, next upcoming Friday night. Unaka is a winnable game for them this year. We talk about winnable games here and there. This is a truly winnable game. Unaka, not the team that they've been in the past few years. The game will be, I believe, I can't remember if it's at North Green or on
It's
the
at
road,
North Green.
and I don't want to say it wrong. Okay, so it's at North Green. It's a winnable game. I don't think North Green has a chance to host a playoff game anymore or win a regional championship, but the playoff hopes are still there.
Yeah.
You beat Unaka, you're right back into the thick of things.
Yeah. You beat Unaka, and I would argue, and if anybody from Stony Creek or Cosby hears this, they may want to fight me. That's okay. Arguably, I would think their two easiest conference games are ahead.
Two
of
of
them.
their easiest ones. Two of the three easiest, I would say.
Yeah.
So
So
you've got the game against Jellicoe to begin, and that one, as you see right now, it's Jellicoe and Cloudland possibly playing for the championship next week.
Well, they are playing for the championship.
yes.
They're playing for the championship next week. I mean, unless something goes really awry the last couple weeks of the season. But you've got Unaka, very, very win. I mean, when I say winnable, I mean like 2 to 3 score winnable game. Cosby, same thing, and that's if you go and take care of business. You get 3 conference wins, you finish 3rd in the conference, you go to the playoffs, and you never know what happens.
You get out of that bottom seed too, and you don't have to go play teams like Coalfield too.
Yeah, that's true. That's true, and you put yourself in a position to make a little bit of a playoff run, make some noise during the playoffs. So, North Green, I think they're a good team. I mean, they really are a good team. They just offensively they have to find an identity that is consistent. Whether it's throwing the football, whether it's running the football, they have to establish an identity, and their offensive line has to get behind that. I mean, last night, if they could have the 55-yard touchdown run, it was a great run by Yeshua Vault. He broke a couple of tackles in the backfield and then just beat everybody to the end zone. I mean, that's why he scored that touchdown. But every other time that he had the ball, I mean, there were multiple times, and you can go back and watch it on film. It's not just my opinion. There were multiple times that as soon as he was handed the ball from Thomas Darnell, he was waylaid in the backfield. That has to be addressed. It just has to be addressed. And it's not a fun conversation. As a former offensive lineman myself, it's not a fun conversation, but sometimes you have to look at yourself in the mirror and say, I got to have a little bit more pride. I've got one of the best running backs, the best running back in the history of our school in the backfield. If I give him a little bit of room, I know what he's going to do. And that's what I'm saying. If North Green can find that identity, defensively, they're a good football team. They've got athletes all over the field. Yeah, Cloudland was able to get outside and get to the corner and beat them last night. But again, I don't know that Cloudland had a run that was more than 20 yards. And that sounds like, it is a lot.
You compare it to the games the last few years, you're seeing multiple runs of 20 or more yards against North Green from Cloudland.
Yes, exactly. And they held Cumberland Gap, a team that scored 22 on West Green last night. They held Cumberland Gap to 21 points.
Mm-hmm.
They have a good defensive team.
I don't think they've allowed more than besides Williamsburg, yes.
They've played good defense. If you can get offense to be, consistent, it doesn't have to be great. If it can be consistent and just score points and keep your defense off the field. There was a point in the game last night where the defense had just got a 4-and-out against Cloudland, and it was close. It was a 2-score or a 1-score game at that point, I believe, maybe 2-score. But the defense had just forced a 4-and-out on their own 20 or 34-yard line. North Green had the ball at the Cloudland 34 because Cloudland did not get it. First play from scrimmage, 9-yard run by Yeshua Vault down to the 25. The very next play, interception that was returned back to midfield. If you take that away, even if you don't score right there in that particular time, if you take that interception away, the defense just got them to go 4-and-out, gave you the ball in short field, but now 3 plays later, they're back on the field and they're at midfield. That's demoralizing. Not only is that an interception that switches momentum and gives the ball back to Cloudland, but your defense is like, what the crap? It's hard to just continue to go back out there knowing that you're playing really, really good defense, but then your offense is just going to let you down. And, with a team like North Green, a lot of the players that are on defense are the same players that are on offense. So, you have to kind of help yourself out. It's kind of like what you said. You have to help yourself out on defense by having consistent offense. Even if you're not scoring points, put them on their heels. Keep putting pressure on that defense, on their defense. And last night they didn't have that. And that, they got beat 46-8, and so it sounds kind of silly to say that's the reason why they lost that game, but that is the reason they lost that game. They lost 46-8, but they could have won that game. They could have beaten Cloudland last night. It has nothing to do with Cloudland being 46-8 better than them. It's just one of those things that's an anomaly. If they played 5 more times, that game would be a lot closer than what that score indicated.
And that's one thing that North Green struggled with all year, are those mistakes on offense, those turnovers. The game that you saw the most, and I think it was the Cumberland Gap game. That's the game where they had 5 turnovers. And if you correct some of those mistakes, there's a chance you could be talking about them being 4-3 right now.
Yeah.
They beat that Cumberland Gap team if they don't turn the ball over 5 times. Jellicoe, how much different that game could be. Those 2 turnovers, that fumble for a touchdown, that pick 6 on back-to-back plays, that was the only time Jellicoe scored. You take that away, North Green could be sitting at 4-3, sitting at, second in the conference right now.
Yep.
With just that game against Cloudland as their only loss.
Well, and even last night, first series that Cloudland had, Cloudland got the ball first. Very first series, North Green had them 3rd and 6. It was almost a 3 and out. Cloudland wouldn't have punted it. I didn't know that at the time. But it was 3rd and 6. North Green jumps off sides. 2 plays later, it's 3rd and 4. North Green jumps off sides. You just can't, you can't continue to shoot yourself in the foot over and over and over and over again and expect to win close games. You have to be able to turn the corner on that aspect of the game.
They've got an important one coming up with Unaka, though. They get a bye week, though, so you won't see them playing next week in action. They got plenty of time to prepare for that one against the Rangers. Took a 46-8 loss to Cloudland, though, this past week. We'll go ahead and jump to break one more time. We'll get a few messages in before we jump ahead and cover Greenville's 54-7 homecoming win last night against Sullivan East. So we'll be right back in just a minute here on Grassroots Media.
Need a utility line trenched out? Whatever your light backhoe needs, groundhog trenching is the solution. Groundhog trenching does the digging so you don't have to. Whether you need to bore under the driveway, sidewalk, road, or maybe you just need help with your next livestock burial, groundhog trenching can do the job. Give us a call or even send us a text today to find out how the groundhog can help on your next project. Call 423-823-8308. That's 423-823-8308.
The mission at TRC Logistics is providing independent advice and identifying the right fit for you. Services are sourced and procured based on solution specifications provided by our supply chain solution. TRC Logistics has the freight management experience you need with the quality you can depend on. Customer service is our goal, not increased profit margins. The mission at TRC Logistics is simple: to provide high-quality services in a timely manner. Our team caters to each project's specific needs to ensure excellence. When service matters, TRC Logistics is the solution.
Welcome back to Grassroots Media. Welcome back to this morning's edition of the Pizza Inn Saturday Morning Kickoff Show live here from Pizza Inn in Greeneville. We're closing out with the Greeneville Green Devils once again, who picked up another regular season win last night within the Region 1 4A Conference over Sullivan East on homecoming night by the score of 54-7. Dalton, I usually talk about it with Mark every week, and that was a catchphrase that I had last year. Another week, another Green Devil win. Greeneville wins again. Pretty convincing fashion once again over Sullivan East. I think this is actually the first time that a conference opponent has scored on Greeneville dating back to 2021. And I could be wrong. That was something that we had talked about going into the game. The Sullivan East was averaging over 300 passing yards a game. They go in last night, 66 total passing yards, 9 at the half.
I feel sorry for the Patriots. In back-to-back weeks,
they've had Elizabethton and Greeneville. Started 4-1, had one of the best starts in a while.
That's one of those games where this morning they're probably breathing a little bit of a sigh of relief.
You got the two hardest ones out of the way.
You got the two most difficult games out of the way for sure. It's one of those. It's one of those games for Greeneville as homecoming game. You expected this result, maybe not as lopsided as it ended up being, but I think Carson Quillen had 100 yards rushing. 100 even rushing on the ground. Corbin Cannon was able to throw the ball around a little bit, and then you had Caden Ball that came in, and he was able to throw the ball around a little bit. It's good whenever you can get some of those younger guys in, and that's something that Greeneville is used to being able to do throughout the season. But, I think it's good to have games like Morristown West. I about said a couple weeks ago, but last week on Tuesday, it's good to have games like that where your starters get to play for the majority of the game, because you're going to have that kind of conditioning whenever it gets into playoff time later on. Greeneville 5-0 after 7 weeks. So they're 5-0, continuing to march towards another regional championship, for the Green Devils. I think the thing that's going to test Greeneville the most this year in the postseason is, can their offense do enough? We saw in the first half of that Alcoa game, their defense played pretty well against the offense of Alcoa. But their offense, kind of the same thing as North Green, obviously a different level, but same thing. Can you be consistent enough? Can Corbin Cannon do what he needs to do with the football? Can he get rid of it to those receivers? Can Emmanuel Dixon, can Carson Quillen continue to break off chunks of yards and keep the Green Devils ahead of the chains? And that's what it's going to take.
You saw a really good night from Corbin Cannon last night, too. He's kind of struggled in past weeks, and he came in, completed 8 of 11 attempts for 76 yards. Didn't get a touchdown on the board, but he had a good completion rate. That's good for his confidence going forward, too, because he's going to need it going into the last stretch before they break into the playoffs, too. And then you get your young guy in there, Caden Ball, 2 of 3 with a touchdown, 59 yards total. It's good to see you get 2 quarterbacks in there that are kind of testing the waters with both of them and getting Caden that experience before Corbin graduates later this year. Receiving him, Hayden Goad, 3 catches, was thrown to 3 times, 65 yards. Zayden Anderson, 2 catches for 9 yards. Cooper Johnson had 1 catch for 35 yards. Hayden Goad scored that 1 touchdown from Ball. And then in the running game, as you mentioned, Carson Quillen, 11 rushes, 100 yards, just under 10 a carry with 2 touchdowns. Emmanuel Dixon, 6 rushes, 34 yards and 2 touchdowns. And then Caden Ball had 1 on his feet, too. He had 5 rushes for 24 yards and a touchdown. So you're seeing everybody get in there and churn out offense for Greeneville. It's good to see Quillen back, too, after he sat out last week in their conference game against Volunteer after getting banged up a little bit over Mo West. But it's a good thing about Greeneville this year is you're not seeing those stars on the field, those certain names, lead each week in receiving and rushing. You're seeing different players kind of get in there now.
Mentioning Carson Quillen, we actually have a really cool new show that's going to be airing in October, and he's going to be the first one. Not a lot of people know this. Some do, some don't. Baseball doesn't get the glory that football and even basketball does around here. But Carson Quillen was an Under Armour All-American last year.
Yeah, speaking of baseball, man, Baseball America yesterday just released their top 100 high school prospects for 2025. No Carson Quillen. Come on, Baseball America.
Hey, he's just a junior. I think by the time that he's next year and they release their top 100 prospects, he's going to work his way in there. And that may even change he may even.
You don't even have to be on that list, honestly. Though.
Well, but I think he'll creep in there just because the summer that he had this summer in travel baseball. I mean, he was turning heads left and right. But with all that to say, our new show is going to be called The Sunday Sit Down. And, sitting down it's going to air on Sunday nights, and it's going to be kind of like a 60 minutes type of thing where we get to sit down with athletes and just talk to them about things. Carson Quillen's our first one. We did an interview with him back a couple months ago in preparation and talked with him about his Under Armour All-American nod and a little bit about football, but mostly about baseball. And so that's a show that I'm really excited about doing. And continuing to just put out new content and new shows and things that highlight what these athletes around Greeneville and Greene County and really East Tennessee are doing. But he's our first one. He'll be on the pilot episode here in a couple weeks, starting in October, and that is the Sunday Sit Down. And again, he may not be a top 100 prospect yet, but I assure you he will be soon.
I mean, I might be biased just because we've watched him play a lot, watched him win a state championship last year, but just seeing him play, you feel like he's one of the top 100 high school players in that junior class going to be a senior next year in 2025.
Yeah, I mean, as a member of the media, it's nice to put out stuff like that, but it's just really hard to do. I mean, when you're talking about a national list of 100 people.
Thousands and thousands and thousands of high school players,
and
tough.
And there's probably thousands of players that are well, maybe not thousands, but there are hundreds of players who are good enough to be included in that top 100.
And you don't necessarily have to be in that list. Was Brady Smith in that list last year? No. 3rd round pick to the Dodgers. You don't necessarily have to be in those rankings to elevate your name in the future.
I will continue to say I've been around the game a very long time, and I will continue to say that, in my opinion, he is a day one pick for somebody in a couple years.
If not, go to Virginia Tech.
Yeah.
Raise your stock.
Yeah.
That's one thing you could do. You've seen it in the past through a lot of players. I can name plenty of examples right now where you don't like the spot that you get out of high school, go to college, raise your stock, more money, better draft position, better team.
Yeah. So while Carson Quillen is running up and down the football field and, he's just a really good athlete, I'm a firm believer that in a couple of years he's gonna have a decision to make. Do I sign a signing bonus for a lot of money, or do I turn it down and go to Virginia Tech? I firmly believe that, and he's a fun athlete to watch on the football field. And for Greeneville, they're going to need him to continue to do just that as they go down the stretch with Elizabethton staring at him in that last week of the season.
That's what I wanted to touch on. The TSSAA did a really good job scheduling those games in Week 11 because a lot of them through Region 1 they got right. It's looking like Greeneville and Elizabethton are going to shape up to be for the title. It's looking like Chucky Doak and Gatlinburg Pittman are going to be that way. Same with South Green and Hampton. So they did a really good job scouting those out and scheduling those games for Week 11.
It's like that the rivalry week in college football, the last week of the season.
Mm-hmm.
You've got Tennessee, Vanderbilt, Clemson, South Carolina, Georgia Tech, Florida State. I mean, you got that rivalry week that last week. It's kind of what this is, seems like.
And then we're going to go through Greeneville stats one more time. Total yards, 419. They broke 400 on total yards on only 55 total plays. Allowed only 94 yards the whole night. Less than 100 yards. I don't know how many times they've done that this year, but I know it's been a few. Only allowed 6 first downs to Sullivan East. As we mentioned, only 66 passing yards when they had been averaging over 300 on the season. And they forced 3 fumbles, but only one of them ended up going Greeneville's way. The one thing that hurt Greeneville the most, penalties. 14 for 130. Wasn't at the game. Didn't see it with my own eyes. Don't know how the officiating was, but 14 for 130 seems like the one thing that you would like to clean up going forward.
Well, not just like to, you've got to.
Yeah.
You commit 14 penalties for 130 yards against an Elizabethton or in the past, Anderson County. I mean, you're putting yourself behind the 8 ball.
Yeah. If you have double-digit penalties or you break triple digits in yards, that's one of those games that's going to be hard to win.
Yeah.
Very rarely do you win a game if you commit more than 10 penalties or get more than 100 yards in penalties. It's hard to win those games because you're giving that team a lot of free yardage. One glaring stat that I'll go over real quick also before we end this out, Sullivan East 0 for 7 on third down conversions. That's key for your defense to step up on third down.
Let's hope that Tennessee takes over that statistic today against South Carolina. They have to get off the field.
I think that's important for any team to get off the field. I don't know if we need to talk about college football this week. We were totally wrong on everything we said last week.
Well, if that trend continues, South Carolina by 30. If we're going to be wrong,
you'll never hear me say Tennessee or go Vols or anything like that, but
you're never going to say Tennessee?
I'm never going to pull for Tennessee is what I meant to say,
okay.
But I'm never going to say go Vols or pull for Tennessee, but give Spencer Rattler a hard time tonight.
You're not a Spencer Rattler fan?
No.
Who's Texas got today?
Kansas.
Oh, yeah.
Which has somehow turned into like a rivalry game.
Well, that's because you got the Mad Hatter.
Yeah, because apparently Texas can't beat Kansas.
You got the Mad Hatter up there at Kansas, who was at LSU for a long time, and he's been able to turn the program around up there. Big top 25 game there today.
First time they've ever played, and it's been a top 25 game.
Hey, big game there. A lot of good games in college football today. Florida, Kentucky, Georgia, Auburn. I think that's going to be a sneaky good game.
LSU, Ole Miss.
LSU, Ole Miss. Who cares about either of those teams?
Go Tigers.
Thank you, Lane. Kane Liffen. Well, it was a really good night of high school football last night. I don't know that there were many teams in East Tennessee that were on a bye week. There were a lot of games.
There were a lot of games. I saw Bobby Rader's tweet last night of all the final scores, and it took you a minute or two to go down there and read all the scores because there were a lot of games last night.
There were a lot of games in East Tennessee, and it was a good night. Next week you're going to have some bye weeks. We got a couple, or at least one, in Greene County, and again, big games next week. Big games next week for Greene County schools, Greeneville-Greene County schools. We'll see how things fare and shake out.
Greenville's hosting Granger. As we always do at the end of these, we'll go through everything one more time. South Greene wins 35-25 over Seymour. They host Happy Valley next week. Great night from Nash Raider. Chucky Doak with a great night from Brock Rush. They win 27-6 over Claiborne and host Johnson County next week. West Greene wins 49-22 over Cumberland Gap with 371 rushing yards. They travel to Hampton next week for a key regional matchup. North Greene fell 46-8 to Cloudland. They're on a bye week and then play Unaka 2 weeks from yesterday. And then Greenville with a 54-7 win over Sullivan East. They host Granger next for another Region 1 4A matchup, looking to continue their winning streak within the region and hope to play Elizabethton for the regional championship at the end of the season. That puts a cap on this week's episode. Dalton, thank you once again. Hopefully we'll have somebody else on camera next week so you won't have to just stare at me the whole time while Dalton talks. Hopefully Mark will be back. Mark, we miss you. As always, I've been your host, Tyler. Thank you for watching this week's edition of the Pizza Inn Saturday Morning Kickoff Show, live here from Pizza Inn in Greeneville. Look forward to seeing you next time here on